Discover how a billionaire's heart was broken by an inspiring purchase from a poor girl's kindness. In the heart of a quaint Midwestern town, where the air was always tinged with the scent of freshly baked bread and pastries, a spirited girl named Sarah lived a life woven with dreams and kindness. At just 16, her determination shone brighter than the sun as she watched the struggles of the local veterans, men and women who had fought bravely and returned home only to feel lost. Sarah worked alongside her mother in their humble bakery, the sweet treats just a way to bring a smile to many faces, yet the burdens of life weighed heavily on her community. Each day, after school, she would save a few coins, time spent snatching scornful glances at her worn-out shoes. Those coins were meant for something greater. The local Veterans Center, desperate for funds to support those who served their country, had only seen sadness in the eyes of its patrons. Inspired by the resilience around her, Sarah decided it was time to act. With her meager savings, she bought supplies to create care packages filled with pastries, warm blankets, and heartfelt notes of sweet comfort for those who fought battles long after the war had ended. One fateful afternoon, Jack, a wealthy tech mogul back from the chaos of big city life, wandered into the center. He was seeking answers from a town that felt foreign to him now. As he stepped inside, he heard laughter, a soft yet vibrant sound that pierced through the gloom. There was Sarah, glowing like a beacon as she handed out pastries, her enthusiasm lighting up the room. At that moment, Jack felt a flame ignite within him, rekindling desires connected to the simplicity of community life he had left behind. But as news of Sarah's mission spread like wildfire, whispers began to circulate. "Who is this billionaire?" they murmured. "He wants to help her. But does he really care?" Sarah watched as community members voiced their skepticism, fearing that Jack's wealth would overshadow their tightly held values of loyalty and kinship. To them, he represented a threat, not a savior. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Battered by the rising tension and frustration over misunderstandings, Jack felt heartbroken. He never wished to disrupt but to uplift. But now Sarah was caught in the whirlwind of this chaos, grappling with consequential doubts about whether she could accept his help, or if it would tarnish what she was trying to build. Both of their worlds were about to collide unexpectedly. With a crucial announcement looming over the fate of the Veterans Center, they stood at a crossroads, challenged to redefine what true wealth meant in a community where warmth and connection reigned supreme. Would they find a way to see beyond their differences? Would compassion prevail? As the air became thick with anticipation, the stakes rose, leaving hearts aching and unresolved between Sarah and Jack. Would they break down the walls, or were they destined to remain apart? Sarah woke the next morning with a sense of uncertainty that crawled through her bones. The sun had barely risen, casting a pale glow over her cluttered room. She stared at the ceiling, her mind swirling with thoughts of Jack and the Veterans Center. The whispers from the night before echoed, making her stomach turn. Does he really care? The question gnawed at her, dragging her deeper into an emotional whirlpool. At the bakery, the smell of warm bread was a comfort, but even the familiar sights couldn't shake her anxiety. Her mother hummed softly while kneading dough, oblivious to the turmoil brewing inside her daughter. Sarah fought to put on a brave smile. It was a daily routine, but today it felt like a mask slipping off. When she opened the door for a regular customer, Mr. Thompson, the elderly veteran with a twinkle in his eye, her heart sank further. He approached the counter with that same warm grin he always wore, but beneath the surface, she sensed a fragility, a threadbare spirit shaped by unending battles. "You're doing good things, Sarah," he said, voice cracking. "We need more kindness in this world." Yet, those words felt like a heavy burden. With Jack's wealth set to shadow her efforts, did she truly embody the kindness Mr. Thompson believed in? Was Jack's help a threat rather than a lifeline? Sarah shook her head, trying to dispel the confusion, but the questions persisted. As the day wore on, the bakery filled with customers, each a reminder of the community she cherished. Yet she couldn't shake off the feeling of despair. With so much at stake for the veterans, could she afford to distance herself from Jack? The looming announcement at the center was just 2 days away, and it was now or never. With newfound resolve, she stepped away from the register and made her way to the Veterans Center. The familiar streets felt different today, each step weighed with uncertainty, yet she could feel the warmth of support that the town held for one another. She pushed open the door, greeted by the temperature's sudden change and the buzz of familiar chatter. When Sarah entered, she noticed Jack sitting quietly in a corner, his head bowed, a frown creasing his brow. The sight stirred something in her, a mix of pity and determination. She walked over, her pulse quickening with every step. "Jack," she said tentatively, his head shot up, surprise filling his expression. "Hey, Sarah." He paused, collecting himself. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Well, I'm here." She took a deep breath, forcing herself to meet his eyes. "I think we need to talk." As they moved to a quieter area, the air was thick with unspoken concerns. The buzzing around them turned into a murmur as they exchanged uncertain glances, caught in the web of internal fears and external expectation. "I've been reflecting on everything," she started, her voice steadying as she spoke. "About your help and the community's sphere." Jack nodded, his expression grave. "I understand their concerns, but I just want to help. I didn't mean to stir things up." The tension hung heavy, yet within it resided a flicker of understanding. "I'm scared, too," Sarah admitted. "If you help, will they still see me as I am? Or just as someone who accepted the charity of a billionaire?" Jack's eyes softened. "But maybe that's not what matters. Perhaps we can show them that we're in this together." Just then, the door swung open, and a loud voice boomed through the room. "Hey, are the rumors true? Is the center closing down?" The question echoed ominously, piercing through their fragile moment. Sarah exchanged a frantic glance with Jack. Just as their hopes began to align, the unexpected fear of exposure crept in. Suddenly, everyone's attention was drawn toward them, with the community's fate hanging in the balance. They had no choice but to act together. Could they unite their strengths in such a way that would blend their worlds into one? Would courage leap through that divide, or were they only spiraling further apart? "Sarah, we need to make them understand," Jack insisted, grabbing her hand for support just as the murmurs grew louder around them, and in that instant, both knew the moment of truth was drawing near. Would they rise to the challenge, or would fear and doubt keep them on opposite sides? The room fell silent, the weight of uncertainty hanging thick in the air. Eyes from across the center turned towards Sarah and Jack, their expressions a tapestry of curiosity, concern, and suspicion. Sarah felt every heartbeat echoing in her ears, the murmurs surrounding them growing sharper, whispers of doubt and tradition intertwined. "Look, let us clear the air," Sarah said, her voice rising above the soft chaos. "We're working together to keep the center open. We can't let fear dictate what we do." She squeezed Jack's hand, feeling the warmth of his support grounding her. Jack shifted, adjusting to the spotlight. "If I could step in to help, I would do it. It's not just about money, it's about making a real difference for all of us." The silence stretched longer as the crowd absorbed his words. Before they could drown in speculation, Mr. Thompson stepped forward, his frame frail but his spirit unwavering. "This town remembers," he said, his voice steady. "Sarah's been here for us." "But Jack, they question your intentions." "I understand that." Jack's tone softened, his brows furrowed with sincerity. "But what better way to show I mean it than doing this together? If I can lend a hand, we can bridge these gaps. Together?" A younger veteran shouted from the back, arms crossed defiantly. "What does that even mean? You come in with your checkbook and assume we'll roll over?" The skepticism ignited a fire of anger in Sarah's chest. "Jack wants to help. Just look at what he did. He believes in this center." She felt her voice tremble, frustration leaking through. "I don't know him," he replied sharply. "And neither do you." The tension thickened, but she could see a shift. People were listening. Jack met her gaze, sensing her determination. If you don't know me, let me prove it, he called out, voice clear and resonant. I'll work alongside each one of you. We can make a plan to keep this center open. Let us overcome whatever divides us. A wave of murmured disbelief rippled through the crowd. Jack's willingness to stand there, ready to face their doubts, stunned them. But Sarah knew it was a risk. What if he was still seen as just the billionaire? What if they failed? Okay, we hear you, Mr. Thompson stepped forward again, hopeful yet cautious. But actions speak louder than words. Show us you're in this for the right reasons. Jack nodded earnestly, the challenge clear in his eyes. I'll put my money where my mouth is. No strings attached. Only commitment to what's best for the veterans and this community. The air crackled with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. People began to murmur again, weighing their trust against the potential for change. Sarah's heart raced. Could this work? As she stepped back, a sense of empowerment surged through her. Let us define what we need as a community. We can unite and save the center. Together. A ripple of agreement stirred in the crowd. One by one, heads nodded, and smiles began to flicker amidst the uncertainty. She gazed into Jack's eyes, hope carving out space where fear once held sway. Just as the tension waned, a loud crash echoed from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see a display of memorabilia tumbling over, scattered papers swirling like leaves in a storm. The unexpected chaos snapped Sarah back to reality. Was this a sign that everything was unsettled and fragile? Or was it an opportunity, a call to address the impending storm clearly brewing over their heads? Let us clean this up, Sarah urged, rising to the challenge. And keep talking. But she couldn't shake off the feeling that something deeper was at stake. Would they uncover the truth in their journey towards unity, or would hidden divides prove to be an insurmountable barrier? As they began to collect the fallen items, a new voice emerged from the crowd. What if I told you about some secrets this center holds that could change everything? Sarah's heart plunged as curiosity sparked. Would this lead to the revelations they all needed? Or would it open deeper wounds that threatened to tear them apart once more? The murmurs in the room faded into a tense silence, every pair of eyes fixed on the newcomer. It was Tom, a man known more for his sharp tongue than his gentle heart. Sarah could see the mixture of curiosity and caution in the faces surrounding her. The damage from the crash seemed to be forgotten as all attention turned to Tom, all ears eager to hear the secrets he claimed could change everything. What do you mean, Tom? Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper but thick with urgency. What secrets? Tom stepped forward, his rough exterior contrasting the vulnerability that flickered in his eyes. I've seen things in this center, things nobody talks about. There are whispers of what really happened when it first opened, a history some would prefer to keep buried. Jack frowned slightly, shifting his stance. And what could that possibly have to do with the present? More than you realize, Tom replied, his gaze penetrating. This center isn't just a refuge, it holds memories and stories that could either bind this community together or tear it apart completely. The room shifted uncomfortably, the air thickening with anticipation. Sarah could feel Jack's hand tighten around hers, drawing strength from each other amidst the uncertainty. She knew they needed to face those stories, whatever dark shadows they might cast. Tom, we need to know. If it's something that could help us, she started, but he nodded, cutting her off mid-sentence. I'm not saying this lightly. I once helped organize events here. I saw the betrayals, the pain when funding was mishandled. It's more than just budget cuts that threaten the center, it's about trust, and the very history that these walls hold. His words struck deep, and Sarah's heart raced. Could there really be buried secrets that could shift the tides of doubt? Let us hear what you have to say, Jack pressed, his voice steady, though she sensed the underlying tension. We need to confront whatever is lingering in the shadows. Tom studied the crowd, weighing who was listening. All right. But you need to keep an open mind. You may not like what you hear. He took a deep breath, exhaling as if releasing years of hesitation. There's a reason why some elders in this community keep returning to the old ways, that's what they know. But many have forgotten the promise made when this center was established. There were intentions to provide more than just sustenance for this town. They wanted hope, a real lifeline for everyone who walked through those doors. Sarah felt the weight of his words sink in. Memories of laughter, camaraderie, and the light of shared moments filled her thoughts. Was it all slipping away because of mishaps and miscalculations? And what happened? She inquired, unable to hold back. Tom's eyes flashed with a mixture of anger and regret. When promises weren't kept, trust shattered. People left, feeling abandoned, thinking they had no stake anymore. This place became a ghost of itself. The crowd buzzed with murmurs, disbelief mingling with empathy. Sarah felt the emotions swell, a tight knot of urgency building inside her. How could they possibly move forward if they didn't first face the truths of their past? Can we change it? Sarah asked, her voice thick with determination. Can we rebuild that trust? Tom seemed to ponder her question, a flicker of hope breaking through his guarded demeanor. It won't be easy. But if the community stands together, sharing stories both the good and the painful, it might just be possible. A wave of agreement washed over the room as people exchanged glances. Jack squeezed her hand, and Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose. They could do this. They had to. As more stories began to unfold, a quiet resolve settled among them. But just before a positive surge could lift their spirits, a loud crash interrupted once more. This time, it was the door swinging open violently, revealing an unexpected visitor, Sarah's estranged father. A gasp echoed in the room, and her heart sank. She hadn't seen him in years. What was he doing here now, of all times? Her mind raced with questions and emotions. Was this a coincidence, or was it a sign that everything they had just spoken of might unravel further still? As her father stepped inside, the atmosphere grew charged with uncertainty once again. Would he bring answers or complications that could jeopardize what Sarah and Jack had begun to rebuild? Sarah's breath caught in her throat, her father standing awkwardly in the doorway, a mix of surprise and vulnerability etched on his face. The room instantly felt smaller, his presence a reminder of unresolved scores and memories long tucked away. "Dad?" Sarah whispered, her voice breaking with a mixture of disbelief and old pain. "What are you doing here?" Tom's expression shifted from intrigue to concern, recognizing the tension infiltrating the air. Jack stood closer, his body tense, ready to protect Sarah at a moment's notice. People murmured around her, curiosity piqued but empathy blanketing their judgment. "I heard about the crash," her father stammered, running a hand through his hair as if trying to iron out his thoughts. "I wanted to see if you were okay." A wave of conflicting emotions washed over Sarah. On one hand, she felt the familiar sting of betrayal from years of absence, yet there was also a touch of vulnerability in his eyes, an echo of the man she once called Dad. Why now? Why here? She took a step forward, demanding clarity as her heart thudded heavily against her ribcage. "Because I care." He shot back, desperation coloring his tone. I made mistakes, I know that. But I want to try and make things right. I want to be part of your life again, if you'll let me." The crowd around them fell silent, the emotion palpable. Sarah searched her father's expression. The lines on his face told stories of hardship, but their history felt like a weight pressing down on her. "What do you expect? You disappeared just when I needed you the most." He flinched at her words, a flicker of regret crossing his features. "I was scared, okay? I thought you were better off without me. You're doing amazing things here, and I was just a distraction." Jack's grip tightened around Sarah's hand, silently offering support, but she felt torn. "What do you know about what we're trying to do?" she asked, an edge creeping into her voice. "I found out about the center's issues," he said carefully, his eyes darting away for just a moment. "I might have the means to help." "I can help? Or just buy your way back in?" Sarah interrupted, bitterness flooding her words. "You can't just show up after years and expect things to be fine. It doesn't work like that." "I know it doesn't," he exclaimed, his voice rising slightly. "But I'm here now, aren't I? You deserve a chance. We deserve a chance. It's not just about the center. It's about us. Please just listen. His voice dipped into an earnest plea, and for a moment, Sarah felt her resolve quiver. Part of her wanted to listen, to understand where he was coming from, to reach some kind of reconciliation. But the other part screamed to protect herself from further heartache. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting on each their next move, Sarah's internal conflict a heavy silence in the middle of the buzz. She glanced at Jack, whose expression conveyed both concern and support. Was she ready to dive back into this emotionally treacherous waters when they needed clarity to address the community's crisis? Tom cleared his throat, trying to bring back the focus. We all have our burdens, but every story you share can make things better. What do you say? Sarah felt the weight of expectation press against her. Faces filled with hope and skepticism surrounded her. This was a turning point, but what direction would it take? Could her father's reappearance be woven into the very fabric of their fate, or would it simply unravel the fragile threads they were working to stitch together? As the air thickened with tension, her father reached for her, desperation flashing in his eyes. Sarah, please. And just then, the power flickered, casting the room in darkness for a fleeting moment before the lights returned, highlighting the chaos. A loud crash was heard from the back, followed by a shout of alarm. What now? An unexpected crisis had just begun to unfold, one that would test their resolve and the fragile connections they were trying to rebuild. The crowd shifted uneasily, their whispers morphing into a low hum of concern as a rushing sound enveloped the room. Sarah's father's hand dropped, the moment of vulnerability evaporating as panic surged. She turned to the back of the room, her heart racing. Jack, stay close, she instructed, her voice steady despite the turmoil threatening to bubble up inside her. She took a few cautious steps toward the noise, her breath hitching in her throat. The familiar weight of fear began to claw at her, reminding her of a time when chaos felt like her constant companion. What is going on? Tom called out, his voice strained as he tried to peer through the mass of people. The noise intensified, more crashes echoing as people instinctively backpedaled, creating a wider space for whatever was happening. Stay here, Jack urged, stepping in front of her, but Sarah shook her head resolutely. I need to know. Pushing past him, she moved toward the source of the disturbance. Stumbling figures came into view, panic etched on their faces as they clutched broken chairs and toppled tables. In the center of it all stood a young man, his hands raising defensively, his expression a mixture of fear and regret. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, he stammered, eyes wide as he backed away from the scene. Is everyone okay? Sarah shouted, finally settling on the young man's face. His wide eyes settled on her, recognition washing over his features. He was one of the local volunteers, someone she had seen around the center, always eager to help. I just slipped. I thought I could help clean up faster. I didn't mean to cause trouble. A collective sigh of relief rippled through the crowd. You scared us, someone else added, a hint of lightness in their tone. Sarah stepped closer, focusing on the young man. It's all right. We need to stay calm, she said, her voice steady. Let us get everything back in place. As tension began to dissolve, Sarah caught sight of Tom, standing at the edge, his demeanor shifting from helplessness to something akin to determination. He stepped forward, motioning to the volunteers. Why don't we all lend a hand? If there's one thing we're good at, it's coming together. The murmur of agreement flowed through the crowd, and Sarah felt the warmth of connection begin to spread as people surged into action. It was as if the chaos, however briefly, had knit them together in shared purpose. Jack stood behind her, a proud smile breaking through the concern that had shadowed his features. Sarah turned to him, the onslaught of emotions from moments earlier threatening to cascade anew. Isn't it amazing? She murmured, gesturing to the crowd. When it matters, we find strength in each other. Just like you found strength in confronting your dad, he replied softly, threading his fingers through hers. What are you going to do now? She looked back at her father, who remained at the doorway. His posture had shifted, a hesitant gaze planted firmly on the scene unfolding. Was he a part of this, or was he still on the outside looking in? Maybe this is where we start, Sarah said finally, her voice firm but gentle. Maybe I can't change the past, but we can start building something together. A glimmer of hope sparked, but uncertainty still loomed. Could they find common ground now, in this moment of healing? And as she took a deep breath, urging herself to bridge the distance between them, a faint sound of sirens suddenly echoed in the distance, drawing their attention away just as they began to inch closer. What now? Jack muttered, glancing toward the exit, concern shadowing his face. Sarah's heart sank. The evening's efforts were far from over. Whatever came next, they would have to face it together. But deep down, she wondered, would her father's return prove to be the anchor, or would it drag them down into deeper waters? The sirens wailed closer, slicing through the tension like a knife. In that moment, a chill replaced the warmth of hope Sarah had just felt. The people around her exchanged nervous glances, some shifting uncomfortably, others stealing worried looks at her father. Should we evacuate? Tom questioned, his eyebrows knitting together in concern. No, let us not panic, Sarah said, trying to maintain a calm demeanor. It might just be a precaution. She could feel Jack's grip tightening on her hand, and she turned to him, desperate to find strength in his reassuring eyes. We'll be okay, she whispered, masking her own uncertainty with a brave smile, but as the sirens grew louder, the crowd started to break into small clusters, murmuring about what might be happening outside. Sarah's gaze drifted back to her father. He stood rooted at the door, caught between a desire to engage and a deep-seated fear that kept him planted in place. She had spent years waiting for a moment like this, and yet here it was, the weight of the past pulling at her heart. Dad, she began softly, stepping towards him. But he flinched back slightly, like a deer caught in headlights. Sarah, he said, his voice trembling with uncertainty. Is everyone safe? For a moment, all she could do was stare at him, her mind racing. Was he truly concerned, or was this just his instinct to maintain a facade? Her chest tightened as memories of their fractured history played like a twisted reel in her mind. She had craved his attention, his love, the affection that had always felt just out of reach. Yeah, we are, she replied, attempting to assess his tone. But what could she say that would cut through the years of silence and regret? Before she could finish, the doors swung open, revealing officers rushing in, their uniforms stark against the dim light of the community center. Everyone, please calm down and stay where you are, one officer called out, scanning the room with sharp eyes. The crowd quieted, confusion hanging heavily in the air. What's going on? Sarah pressed, her voice rising above the silence. One of the officers stepped forward. We received reports of a disturbance outside. We want to ensure that everyone here is safe. Can you all remain in this area while we assess the situation? Murmurs of concern swept through the room. People began to glance nervously out the windows, anxiety tangible in the atmosphere. Is it about the noise? Someone nearby asked. The officer hesitated, then continued, it's unclear. We're just being cautious. But please, stay calm. The crowd's tension spiked again, the air growing thick with uncertainty. Sarah felt Jack squeeze her hand tighter. She wanted nothing more than to dismiss the worry, but the truth sat heavy in her gut. What if this was something more? Her father's voice, barely above a whisper, broke the spell. I need to go find your mother. She doesn't know any of this. Wait. Sarah called, panic surging through her veins. You shouldn't but he didn't wait. He darted from the room, leaving her with a swirl of emotions: fear, anger, disappointment. Why can't he just stay? She muttered, her breath hitching. Jack turned toward her, his expression laced with concern. He'll be back. They'll clear things up. Will he? She shot back, frustration bubbling to the surface. How can I trust him when he just left? A recollection of the past hung between them, heavy and unresolved. Jack opened his mouth to speak, but was interrupted as the officer stepped forward again, his voice steady but urgent. Everyone, please take a seat and remain calm. This will be over soon. As Sarah moved toward a table, she glanced at the door her father had exited. An unsettling feeling gnawed at her. She had hoped their moment of healing would begin tonight, but it seemed like shadows from the past were gathering once more. What if this was the moment where everything changed? The realization struck her, maybe she had to take control. The sirens kept wailing outside, blending with the distant murmurs of fear. Would she step into the chaos if it meant protecting her future? And just as she gathered her resolve, an unexpected crash echoed from the entrance, jolting her alarmingly. What now? The sound splintered the air, sharp and jarring. Sarah's heart raced as she turned, the crowd around her gasping and murmuring in startled tones. It felt as if the fabric of the night had torn, and she was standing at the edge of something unknown and terrifying. Jack's hold on her tightened even more, as if he could physically protect her from the brewing storm. Stay close, he said urgently, his voice barely louder than a whisper. The weight of his words hung heavily between them, a reminder that safety was far from guaranteed. The officers moved quickly, their demeanor shifting from calm to tense as they readied themselves to react. Please stand back, one officer shouted, rushing toward the door. We need order. Sarah's chest felt tight, as if someone were squeezing it. She glanced toward the exit, her mind racing with possibilities. Had something violent occurred? Why hadn't her father returned yet? Would he even be safe out there? The crowd's chatter morphed into sheer panic as people began to stand, some instinctively backing toward the walls, others already edging toward the exits. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something awful was happening just outside those doors. Wait! She called out again, raising her voice to cut through the confusion. We need to stay here. If they're telling us to wait, we should listen. Her heart pounded as she spoke, for she was trying to convince herself as much as everyone else, but the waves of fear were palpable, and it seemed that no one was listening. The chaos around her felt like a rising tide, threatening to sweep her away. Jack pulled her closer, shielding her with his body. Let us just take a moment, he said, his voice steady, but she could see the worry in his eyes. We can't just run out there without knowing what is going on. Then, through the chaos, Sarah managed to catch sight of a figure darting towards them, a woman, hair disheveled and clothes torn, her face painted with desperation. Help! Someone help! The woman cried as she stumbled into the room, breathless and wide-eyed. The officers sprang into action, but Sarah's gaze was fixed on the woman's terrified expression. Something in her heart ached for her. She looked as if she had just run from the depths of despair. What happened? Sarah called out, her voice tinged with urgency. They're coming. The woman gasped, the words spilling from her lips in a panicked rush. They're armed, they're here for something. Questions swirled in Sarah's mind. Who was after her? And why were they here? The air was thick with uncertainty, tension crackling like a live wire. Fear spiraled through the room, mixed with a flicker of determination that ignited within her. In that moment, Sarah knew one thing for sure: she had to act. This wasn't just about her anymore. There were others depending on her, and she couldn't sit back and hope everything turned out fine. Without thinking, she grabbed Jack's hand and felt the stir of something fierce within her. We can't stay here. We need to help her. Jack hesitated, confusion swirling in his expression. But what if just trust me? She urged, her voice rising above the din of uncertainty. We can't let fear control us. As she stepped toward the doorway, adrenaline coursed through her veins. Every instinct screamed at her to retreat, every moment spent planning her future recoiled in fear. But something deeper drove her. Resolute, she waded through the crowd and stepped outside, leaving behind the chaos for the unknown that lay ahead. At that moment, her heart raced not just with trepidation but with a dawning realization that the past didn't have to define her. She could shape the future. As she exited the community center, the moon above glinted menacingly, casting shadows of doubt along the ground. Sarah could barely see beyond the first few steps into the night, but something pulled her onward. What awaited her just outside those doors? Had she made the right choice? Or had she opened a door no one was meant to walk through? The air outside was charged with an anxious energy. The night felt alive, and yet so eerily still, as if the world held its breath, waiting for something to happen. Sarah took a step forward, Jack right beside her, and the woman they had approached looked at her with pleading eyes. "Please, we have to move," the woman urged, glancing over her shoulder as if the shadows themselves were closing in. "What do you mean they're coming?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling, but a fierceness gripped her. There was something about this woman's fear that was contagious. It propelled Sarah to think faster, to act sharper. "They're after me. I saw something I wasn't supposed to. Please." The urgency in her tone melted Sarah's hesitation. The flicker of electricity sparked in her heart. She wasn't alone in this. Jack squeezed her hand tightly, and then, without another word, they followed the woman deeper into the unknown. There was no going back. A gravity pulled them onward, into the looming shadows that seemed to shift and twitch with a life of their own. "Which way?" Jack asked, scanning the area while gripping Sarah's hand like a lifeline. "Over here," the woman said, leading them past a row of parked cars. The interior lights of a few vehicles flickered like dim stars in the chaos, but none shone brighter than Sarah's resolve. She felt alive as adrenaline kicked in, drowning the fear that had threatened to engulf her just moments ago. "Who are they? What did you see?" Sarah pressed on, thinking clarity could break the hold of panic. "Their SA group," the woman gasped, glancing back at the building they had just left. "They're looking for something we thought was safe." "What does that mean?" Jack's brow furrowed, uncertainty dancing in his eyes. The woman hesitated, a shadow creeping back over her face. "It means, they'll do anything to get it back. They won't let anyone stop them." The weight of her words sank deep into Sarah's chest, but she fought it off. She had chosen this, hadn't she? Escaping the suffocating safety of the community center meant stepping into something greater. As they turned a corner, a distant sound echoed through the air, a low rumble that seemed to grow louder and more menacing. Sarah's pulse quickened. "What is that?" "Vehicles," the woman said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're coming, we need to hide." Through the chaos, they rushed toward an overgrown alley, where the tall grass brushed against their legs as if trying to hold them back. Sarah felt the ground rattle beneath them, the sound of tires rolling ever closer. "We can't be seen," Jack whispered urgently. He bent low, and Sarah followed suit, pushing aside the instincts that screamed at her to run blindly into the night. All she could focus on was the flicker of hope fighting against the growing darkness. As they crouched behind a dumpster, the headlights of a truck illuminated the alley. The beam swept across them, but thankfully, it continued on. A sigh escaped her lips, relief flooded through her. "What do we do now?" Sarah muttered under her breath, though the question felt hollow. The world was spiraling into uncertainty, and she wasn't sure how to regain control. "Stay quiet," the woman replied, her voice shaky. "We can't let them find us. Trust me, I know how they operate." A tremor of fear shot through Sarah as she wondered what darkness the woman was hiding. Yet at the same time, she felt that fierce flicker again. Maybe this was what it meant to truly be alive, to confront fear and rally against it. Just then, an unexpected sound broke through the tension, the sharp clang of metal against metal. They all turned, wide-eyed, as a figure stepped further into the alley, silhouetted against the flickering lights. "Who's there?" the figure called, and Sarah's heart slammed against her ribcage. What were they about to face? Would the shadows close in, or could they find a way to turn and fight back? As they huddled together in the alley, Sarah's heart raced. The figure's voice echoed ominously, sending a chill down her spine. "Who's there?" it called again, stepping closer. Jack held her hand tightly, his breathing steady despite the tension. "We need to move," he whispered urgently. "Where?" Sarah felt desperation creeping in. The alley was narrow, but an idea sparked. "We can circle around the back of the building. They won't expect us to double back." With a shared look, they slipped out from behind the dumpster, moving swiftly but quietly. The darkness enveloped them like a comforting blanket, and Sarah focused on the sound of her own breath as they crept toward the building's rear. In that moment, she realized this was her chance, her opportunity to reclaim control and protect not just herself, but others too. They darted behind the large structure, its walls stern yet strangely familiar. Just as they rounded the corner, a soft voice broke the silence. "This way." It was the woman, beckoning them into another alley, smaller and more hidden. They rushed in, excitement mixed with fear swirling in their hearts. Once inside, breaths heaved as they pressed against the cool brick wall. The woman turned to them, eyes shining with intensity. "We have to keep moving. If they find us, they'll know." Jack's voice interjected, calm yet urgent. "We can't just run. We need a plan." "What's happening? What did you see?" The woman hesitated, glancing over her shoulder nervously. "If I tell you, they'll come for you too. But they're after something that could change everything. Not just for me but for all of you." Sarah's heart raced at the implication. "What do you mean?" she asked, feeling the urgency of the moment pressing down like the weight of the world. "Something from the center," the woman whispered. "An old letter. It contains information about the past, something the founders didn't want anyone to know. If they find it, it'll destroy the trust built here. Everything you've worked for will vanish." A cold wave washed over Sarah. This was bigger than she thought. It wasn't just about her or even the veterans, it was about the whole community, the fragile connection they had spent so long trying to rebuild. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps filled the alley, heavy and relentless. "They're coming," she hissed. "Quiet," the woman urged, her eyes wide. "We need to find the letter before they do." "But how?" Sarah asked, panic creeping in again. "Follow me." The woman sprinted down the alley with Jack and Sarah right behind her, racing toward the back entrance of the Veteran Center. Once inside, they ducked behind a table piled with old donations. Jack's brow furrowed as he scanned the surroundings. "Do you have any idea where it could be?" The woman pointed toward a set of lockers near the staff room. "I think it's in one of those. The founders kept everything there." They quickly approached the lockers, adrenaline pounding in Sarah's ears. "Whatever happens, we have to be quick," Jack encouraged, his determination stealing their resolve. With trembling hands, they pulled open one of the lockers. Inside lay a clutter of old files and dusty envelopes. The tension was palpable as Sarah rifled through them, her heart leaping with every empty space. "Where is it?" she breathed, frustration mounting. Suddenly, she uncovered an aged envelope, yellowed and fragile. This looks promising." She held it aloft triumphantly, and her heartbeat pulsed in her ears. A slow clap echoed from the entrance. Sarah's stomach dropped as she turned to see the figure from earlier stepping into the room, flanked by menacing silhouettes. Well, what do we have here?" Fear wrapped around Sarah as they froze. "We don't want any trouble," Jack warned. "Too late for that," the figure smirked, stepping closer. "Hand it over." The urgency in Sarah escalated. She felt the weight of the envelope heavy in her grasp, and in that moment, something shifted within her. She tightened her hold, fueled by the knowledge that their unity was stronger than any threat. "No," she declared firmly. "This belongs to the community." Gasps filled the room as the figure's expression darkened. "You don't know what you're asking for, girl," he sneered, threateningly advancing. Sarah took a step forward, every ounce of fear transformed into fiery determination. "I know exactly what I'm asking for. You think you can just take everything from these people? You don't know what it means to belong here." "She's right," Jack added, standing resolute beside her. "This isn't just about you. It's about everyone who has fought for this center. We want to let you tear it down." The figure hesitated, an air of uncertainty flickering across their face. For a moment, it seemed like the tension might break. Suddenly, the crowd who had gathered in the nearby room surged forward, filling the doorway with the weight of their presence. Mr. Thompson, guiding the veterans, stood tall among them. "We're not backing down," he called out, unwavering. It's time to reclaim what's ours, came a voice from the back. Heads nodded, and the determination rippled through the crowd. In the face of their unity, the figure faltered, the confidence draining from their posture as the crowd surged around Jack and Sarah, united and strong. This isn't over, the figure hissed, retreating into the shadows as the community formed a barrier around Sarah and her newfound allies. Each face shone with resilience, and Sarah felt the warmth of support, the strength in numbers. In that instant, she realized what it meant to have a community behind her, to stand with her against the rising tide of chaos. As they gathered together, arms intertwined, Sarah lifted the envelope proud. "This is just the beginning," she announced, determination burning brightly within her heart. "We're going to tell our story." And just like that, the chaos of the night faded into echoes of courage and renewal. They had confronted fear, faced the unknown, and emerged transformed, a community reborn. Now, more than ever, Sarah saw the endless possibility ahead, united by shared struggle and the softened glow of hope. Together, they had rewritten their story, but their journey was over. As the atmosphere lightened, the shadows of the night lingered, a reminder that they would face whatever lay ahead together, ready to transform whatever darkness threatened to arise again. Don't let this moment pass. You need to subscribe now to keep following this journey. Leave a like right now to fuel our story's reach, and don't forget to comment your thoughts and feelings about this incredible transformation. And whatever you do, don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness the power of unity. Your support is everything, and only true fans will understand the importance of standing behind the channel.